Do you love your creative push? Consider taking 2 minutes to leave a nice review on iTunes. By telling how the show has helped you, you'll help other people find it so they can help them too. If you need some simple instructions on how to do it, head to yourcreativepush.com/review. Thank you in advance for leaving a review, and thank you again to those who already have. Your Creative Push, episode 221.
There's so many artists, nobody really is waiting for you. But if you're out there and you're good, you will get jobs anyway.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Andreas Preis. Andreas is a designer, illustrator, and artist, currently living and working in Berlin. He was born deep in the Bavarian Forest in the south of Germany, and pursuing his lifelong desire to become a painter without a boss, he studied communications design in Nuremberg. Andreas also creates murals, tape art, and live paintings, and also works in different areas of traditional communications design, like typography, logo design, icon design, and art direction. He has worked with a variety of brands, including Microsoft, Adidas, Adobe, ESPN, Ford, Nike, and Coors, just to name a few. Andreas, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
Of course, man. It's a pleasure. I'd like to actually start out by talking about growing up in the Bavarian Forest. I think this really piqued my interest. What exactly does that mean? And can you kind of paint that picture for us, of your childhood?
Yeah, partly it's just that a few years back, I needed for the first time, I needed a biography for, I don't know for what. So I came up with this phrase, being born deep in the Bavarian Forest. But basically it means that I grew up really very much on the countryside, and also not I would say not the cool kind of countryside.
Not the cool kind.
There's really nothing happening, and it's also not this romantic, relaxed vibe there going on. Mm-hmm. People in the Bavarian Forest are not that open and nice, and
really,
most of them just grow up there, stay there, live there, and that's it. So one of the first things I wanted to do was just to get out of there.
To escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit, in short, what it was like. I was there and I never really totally was happy with it somehow.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that, whether it's, just getting out of their hometown or, just escaping to something else. They want to go off into kind of a journey. And for you, I guess it was a creative journey to be your own boss.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to go with communications design?
Actually, in the first place, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I did a lot of drawing when I was in school still, but I actually really had no idea what to do. And the thing was that I was pretty good. I was a pretty good student. I had good grades. So people expect you to do something reasonable, like business or whatever. But I had no interest in that. And then suddenly a friend of my mom's introduced me into communications design and what it was. And this was also the first time in my life that I actually listened to somebody talk about typography. I had no idea what typography was back then. Yeah, and I kind of liked the idea. And since I didn't know what else to do, I started to study communications design.
I love it. And then from that point on, did you have your kind of style at that point, when you graduated?
No.
Or yeah.
Not at all. I could draw, I could paint a bit, so I was pretty good in school, but just like what people do in school. That's not really. Some people might have a style when they are 16. I didn't have one. I just could copy photographs. Not really copy, but I was pretty good at. I actually sold portraits of actors like Leonardo DiCaprio to the girls in my class.
Yes, nice.
Yeah, that was the first money I earned, I guess. But it was just, let's do something with your hobby and not really thinking about what kind of job I would get later on. So though I heard that most people would go into advertising, and even back then I thought I don't want to go into advertising, but I also didn't know what else to do. So I just studied it, and that's what happened.
So you do have a very unique style now. So when did you kind of first notice that start to either take over or like you started to kind of take over it, if that makes sense?
I did a lot of just personal work right after university, just to build a portfolio. And there's actually really one portrait I made of a woman, actually also copying a photograph a little bit, just rendering in a different style. And with this image, for the first time, I created the hair with this hatching that I'm using right now. And I kind of liked it. It was just a coincidence that I did it like that. And I liked it. So I made a first personal project where I made 12 images, and it was the Signs of the Zodiac, where I created everything consisting of patterns and hatchings. And it worked out pretty well. I mean, I really liked it, and it worked out pretty well on the internet, on Behance. So I made more like that, and then it somehow turned into my style. But I never really planned on creating this thing. I played around. I had something that I liked, and I exaggerated it more and more. And yeah, now it's somehow my personal style.
Yeah, I like that idea of it like being kind of apart from yourself. And I think, that's one of the questions that a lot of the listeners ask all the time is, how do you develop that style? How do you find that style? And I think the answer that I get a lot is kind of letting go and not having an expectations, and just kind of letting it kind of take over you in a way. Like you said, like you created this one thing, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, maybe that could work. Let's try to push that a little bit further, and just like continuing to do that without that kind of expectation, I think, is the takeaway there.
Yeah. And also I never actually had the goal to create this own thing. I just wanted to produce work so that I could put it online so that people could find me. The idea of creating my own style was not the main intent. I'm not even sure if I ever thought I want to have my own style, or if it just totally happened. I don't know. I mean, I just did what I liked. So if I saw another illustrator doing something that I really liked, I thought about how could I integrate parts of that into my work. And then you change it a little bit, and then you add something else. And when you do things that you personally like, I think that after a while it will have your own style in a way. Because if you just want to force it, I don't know if it really can work like that. Because just as an example, it's way harder if you have a style to actually change it again. That's way harder than to just develop a style, because it's so hard to get away from what you're doing all the time.
Right, it's like ingrained in you. It's like almost like a part of muscle memory.
Yeah,
like
it's
once
true.
It becomes a part of your like artistic identity, or really actually your actual identity, really.
Yeah, you always go back to things you already know. And in the beginning, when you don't have your specific style, you just add things, and after a while, people recognize you in a way. But if I would now change it completely, which I sometimes think would be interesting, people wouldn't recognize me anymore. So you always go back to the safe route in a way. But yeah, the other thing is that people always think that, you developed your style and then you work completely in the same style for years, but that's just not what's happening. If you compare things I did 5 years ago, they really look different, but people only see, okay, he already did the hatching, so it's the same style. But for me, there's a lot of things I didn't do back then that I do now, but that's only something I guess that I myself really realize and see.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And speaking of the hatching thing, you do that all by hand, correct?
Yeah, like in almost every image, it's all by hand. Yeah,
that's amazing. Well, and how long does that take? Because that has to be time consuming and also tedious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it depends on which kind of image we're talking about, but most of my drawings are done within like 1 to 3 days, I'd say. Mm-hmm. So it's not that long, I guess. I mean, I don't have the fastest style. That's sometimes also annoying. But I know some other illustrators, that most of them, when they have really like their best work, also takes them more than 1 day. So it's not that long, I guess. Yeah, the good thing is that actually I think it's kind of relaxing for me now, because I'm so used to it. It's not like it annoys me that I have to do all this hatching. The thing is that I don't really have to think about it. So I can listen to music, to podcasts. I can even watch a movie while doing this. It's almost like kind of a meditation thing.
Like therapeutic.
Yeah, and it doesn't really annoy me at all. The only thing is if I know I have to get something done in like 2 hours, then it can be annoying. But if it's not about me finishing it very quickly, it's nothing that annoys me at all.
Right. And that's like the whole point of kind of this podcast is to have that thing that brings you joy, that you can see it as like a meditation rather than this like, oh, this thing that I have to get to, this thing that I have to fit in.
Right,
like sometimes you do, like when you have busy life, pencil in your time for your creativity. But then when you get to that time to like really try to enjoy it and not be thinking about the next thing or everything else that you have to do to really kind of zen out, like you're saying.
Yeah, right.
So I was wondering because you only recently started getting into doing digital work and working with like the computer and like digital software. Is that true?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Not completely. I mean, I've always been working with Photoshop and Illustrator. Mm-hmm. Also, when I did my graphic design, I worked a lot with InDesign actually. But I mean, what I really started is to work a lot with those mobile apps that Adobe creates now. So I'm really starting to draw a lot on mobile devices. That's something that I didn't do before, or I did it very, very seldom.
And can you talk a little bit about like that kind of, I don't want to say transition because you still do traditional art, like the hatchings but can you kind of talk about that and like what you kind of learned by using these new tools?
I mean, mostly for me, it's making things more convenient. It always depends a little bit on the project that I'm doing. There's some work I wouldn't do completely on screen because it's still not exactly the same. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. Like you have brushes that make it seem like you're drawing with a pencil, for example, but still it's not the same feeling if you draw on paper. And most of my personal stuff, I still prefer to do on paper. But if I have a client and he wants something that is vector based, that was really annoying for me like a year ago. Now I have this drawing app where I can just draw like I would normally draw, but it's totally vectorized automatically. So this really makes it easier. The other thing is that when now I only have to do some sketch or something. A year ago, I would have taken paper and pens and something wherever I go. And you always need something, some thick paper or something so that you can draw on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like a wooden plate or something. Now, if you have the Microsoft Surface or if you have the iPad, you don't need it. You just have the one screen and it's already perfect to draw on it. And it's less stuff to take with you, which is kind of nice. I once moved to Barcelona for a few months and I had to take a scanner with me. Nowadays, I wouldn't take a scanner with me because I would just draw everything on screen
right
straight away.
Right. And not only is it like convenient and not necessarily pocket sized, but like we were just saying, people that have busy lives and they have to pencil in that time, that short amount of time, thinking about the whole, setting up and getting ready and getting all your materials, that can be a little bit overwhelming where you're just like, well, screw it. I only have 20 minutes. Like it's not even worth like getting everything out and together. And then when you can just kind of open up the file and then just get started or, get back to whatever you're working on. I think that's hugely convenient for people too. Yeah.
It's really a time saver to have this possibility now.
Yeah. And what was that vector-based program you're talking about?
That's Adobe Draw, or I think they even call it Adobe Illustrator Draw now.
Okay, cool.
And it translates every line you do right straight away into a vector file, and you can just export it into Illustrator. And I really like it. I use it a lot, actually, also for jobs. But if you compare a drawing I did there to a drawing on paper, it looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit more digital, which sometimes it's nice, but sometimes it's not. So it's not like I would only use this now, but it helps.
Absolutely. So what would you say to somebody who kind of only works in non-digital art and has either like kind of never used software, or maybe they're just super overwhelmed by the thought of like learning something new and they're just kind of overwhelmed by the thought of that whole process? What would you say to them?
First of all, I mean, I'm pretty much like that too, because I really don't like to learn new apps or programs. I don't know why, actually. There's some people who like to do that. I'm not like that. But a lot of those apps now, like Adobe Draw, you don't really have to learn anything. There's basically, you have your different brushes that you can use, then you can change those brushes, the sizes and stuff, and you have layers. And that's almost everything you can do there. I guess I could explain it to you within half an hour and you could really work with the whole thing. If it's just about drawing and painting, it's really easy. And they have some tools that I'm not using right now, but that I could use. Like they have a way to add perspective, to have a grid that adds perspective. I don't work with it right now, but I could. So maybe one day I will. And this would be something I would never do on paper. I would never start to do this whole construction work you need to do for building a grid and building 3D stuff. But you could do it there. So maybe you have the technology and it helps you to get to something new that you wouldn't have done otherwise. And that's something I think where technology can help you a lot, is just you can play around with things and maybe you get new ideas from it. Because it's always harder to just imagine things and then do them. Sometimes it's just nice to just try some things out. And if you like it, cool. And if you don't, you're not, it's also cool. But this is a lot of the time how you get to new styles.
Right. And it kind of takes the pressure off in a way. It's like the best toy ever.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you can make mistakes all the time because you can go back every time, which is something you get so used to it. Sometimes I try to undo things on paper now that my hand moves to the button where you can undo things. And then you realize, okay, this is paper, which is also cool because on paper, then you have to find a way to integrate it somehow. But still, just the possibility to try so many things in a very, very quick way. It's just nice. It's a nice tool to have. So I would never say to something like out of principle, I don't do it. Like I don't like digital work. So that's why I don't do it. Some people talk like that. I would never do that because you never know how you could maybe use it. You don't have to use it like other artists do. So you can find your own way.
We'll link up some of the tools that you talked about in the show notes page today at yourcreativepush.com/Andreas Preis. I wanted to also talk about the murals that you make. What went into that like decision making process? The first mural that you made, was it like always a goal for you to kind of create something big or to create something like kind of out there?
In a way, I would say yes, because when I was little in the Bavarian Forest, I always thought the graffiti would be cool, but I never really did it because it actually really would have been a problem because those few people who sometimes did something, everybody knew who they were. So right. You couldn't do anything. It doesn't matter if people would see you or if they wouldn't, because they would just have known that it was me. So there was not really a way to do things like that. And then later I got to know a few artists and I thought I wanted to do something like that. So I talked to this guy from Berlin who could give me a wall, actually part of the Berlin wall. And I did my first mural a few years back now.
On the Berlin wall, the Berlin Wall?
Yeah, it was actually there's like the first older version of it where there's still some parts existing.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, and the thing is that they kind of, at least that's what he told me, it was at a part where I couldn't really go because there was just trees and plants and stuff. And they removed all that stuff so they could see it again. And they had this kind of bar and club and a place for workshops and stuff. And because they made it available to the people, they have now the right to paint on it. Like every few months, somebody might paint there. So it's not sure that my mural will stay there forever. But for 2 years now, I think it's there. It should still be there right now.
Oh, that's so cool.
That was really nice. So I didn't get anything for it. Like nobody paid me. I also had to bring my own colors, but he got me this wall, which was pretty cool. And like right after this, a few months after this, I got this job for Microsoft where I could paint a big mural. Because they saw, okay, so you can do your stuff also in bigger sizes. And since then it got more and more actually. Like this year I had 2 walls already and I'm doing maybe 2 more in the next 2 months. And it's really fun because I like digital work, but I also still like to do stuff with my hands. I still like it to have colors on my hands. And also it's nice to get away from the screen.
Right.
Like not doing the same all the time.
Yeah, and to be like outside and out in nature.
Yeah, really, it's great.
And so what was some of the challenges of then translating that work onto like as a much bigger piece?
Yeah, the hatching.
Yeah.
The problem still is a little bit, I can't work on every kind of wall. If it's too rough, my style doesn't really translate. Because you can't do hatching on really dirty, rough walls. I mean, I could use spray paint and use stencils, which I also sometimes do. But if it gets very detailed, it has to be a cleaner wall. And it sometimes is a little bit rough. But actually, I think I can do almost everything I can do on paper or on a computer. I can also do it now on a wall. It just takes a little bit longer just because of the size, but not really a lot, maybe 1 or 2 days more. But other than that, I mean, in the first place, I had to think how to get my drawings that big, like the proportions. Do I use a projector or how do people do it? I really didn't know. So now I have a few different ways how to do it. But when I started, it was really, those were the questions. How can I get this big? How long will it take me? How can I work on this surface and stuff like that?
And how did you figure that out? Like, what was your first method? Did you use a projector?
For the first one, I used a projector, which now I actually know that a lot of people do it. It's not like it's something that's frowned upon.
Right.
I did some things now completely with a grid. Like you make this little grid on paper and then you make this grid on the wall. And you have to just do it on your own, which also works pretty good. But the fastest way just is a projector. But I mean, you get used to it. In the first place, I get kind of nervous when I started. Especially for jobs, because I didn't know if it would work out. But now it's nothing special. It's just fun.
I guess it's like anything else. It's just like building confidence. You're going to be super scared the first time you do something, right. Especially when you're kind of in the public spotlight or when you got people watching you or people that want to pay you for it. I guess it's nerve wracking, but it is just, you got to put yourself out there, do it. And then it becomes like kind of natural. Yeah.
And that was also why I did this first thing where I didn't get paid or anything. Just, I wanted to try it out because I couldn't tell any client, I can do this without really knowing that I can do it. So I did it on my own and put it in my portfolio. And since then, people start to ask me to work for them like that. Because people always have to see, like clients always have to see things to believe that you can do it. You can't just tell them, I could also do this and that, but you don't have it in your portfolio. So they won't believe you.
Right. That proof of concept is so important, not just for other people, but to like prove it to yourself first so that you can gain that confidence and be like, let's take on this project that you have. Yeah.
But also sometimes I got emails where people say, I saw you painting this dog and I really like it. Are you able to draw a cat? People ask questions like that. It's really crazy. Mm-hmm. They can't imagine that it's basically the same concept. So
like the same, yeah. Well, so it's like we talked about that kind of fear of kind of approaching the mural. Is there any other things that have held you back? Any other kind of resistances that you've experienced that maybe people listening could relate to, or maybe that you still encounter on a kind of a daily basis with your art?
Actually, I don't really think so. I think I'm a kind of a positive person in that way. I try not to see the problems, but more see the solutions. Like if something doesn't work out because of some reason, I try to change it somehow so that it does work out. And I was pretty lucky in the beginning, actually, because I started right after university when you don't really need money because you're so used to a cheap life. And I lived with some other guys in a shared flat. And I didn't really need money, and every job was kind of a success. Every little thing was a success. And it would have been way more difficult if I would have taken this job at the advertising agency that actually they offered me. And if I would have tried to start 5 years later, because if you already earn money, it's always something that's holding you back, to go freelance. But for me, I just started right away. I didn't have a lot of success, but I didn't see it that way because every job was, yay, great, it's getting better.
Right.
And slowly but surely it got better. So over the years, if I see it in the long run, it always got better. But that's also always how I saw it. There was this time like 2 years ago where 2 of my jobs where we just stopped. They just said, no, it doesn't work out. And it was within 1 week. And I never had this before happening to me. Like that anybody says, no, this doesn't work out.
Then they just ended the job, or they just were trying to make you do something different?
The thing is, in the first place, they tried to make me something different. And then they realized, okay, this also doesn't work. Nah, let's just stop it here. Like we pay you 50% or something and that's it. Mm-hmm. Thing is, what I learned from it is that both of those jobs, right from the start, I thought it was kind of strange because they didn't really know what they wanted. They just thought, okay, this is roughly our idea. And if this guy with his style just does it, it will be great. And then they realized, our idea is not that good. And it doesn't matter if the style is good, if the idea is not good.
Right.
But just this 1 week, it's just if 2 of your well-paid jobs just get canceled, it's kind of strange. But most of all, for myself, I just took away that, you knew it from the beginning that those 2 jobs were strange. How they talked to you, the briefing that you got, it didn't really sound good. So maybe next time you just don't do it.
Just don't do it? Or like, do you have to like conference with, or not conference with them, but like really like make them understand that their idea might suck? Like, is it like there has to be more of like a back and forth, I guess? Yeah,
you can do a back and forth, but after a while, you really get this experience of when you get an email, you see pretty quickly, okay, is this something I can take seriously, or is it serious, or is it something that won't work out in the end anyway? Like you get a mail where you know they won't have money. You just see it in their mail that they won't have money for this job. And with those 2 things, it just didn't sound like they really knew what they wanted to have, what they wanted me to do. And you can talk to them, but it also it takes a lot of time to talk to people because it's really hard to change people's minds. If they already want something, it's hard to tell them this is really bad. You have to do something completely different. Some clients are like that and it works and it's great, but a lot of clients, you can't really talk to them like that. And it just doesn't make sense to work with them then. It always has to be something where you work together and not just they telling you what to do, even if it doesn't make sense. You still have to do it and then they pay you. This mostly if you do stuff like that where it doesn't sound like a good idea, it will somehow bite you in the ass later.
Right. And so where does that intuition come from? Like when you get that feeling that it's going to be like something's not quite right here. Is that like a human intuition or is that like an artistic intuition from like experience?
I think it's experience mostly. Mm-hmm. Like just a simple example, what I got in the first few years more often than now was this, somebody wrote to you like very like if they already buddies and they're very nice to you. And then it starts like, okay, we have this startup. Almost every message that starts with, we have this startup ends with, we have no budget. Yeah. And you just know it after a while, you know that, okay, you have no budget. Or we are starting to create this ecologically and fair trade t-shirt brand. Yeah, we give you 5% of each sold shirt. You know, it always ends like that. You know it. And you also know after a while that it just doesn't make sense it doesn't help you after a while to work with companies like that all the time because you don't earn money. It's just like that. You don't get money for it. And if it's a big client, also sometimes you see there's clients who think it's cool to have their name. And they just say, yeah, you can put it in your portfolio. And when you start, you think, yeah, great, I can put it in the portfolio. That's amazing. When you do this for a while, for a few years, you realize, okay, your portfolio there will be a lot of names anyway, but those guys paid. If somebody tells you it's a good thing to have their name in your portfolio, mostly it's a bad job. Because this shouldn't be the reason to do it, to get their name. Yeah, and there's stuff like that you get all the time. And also stuff like how people talk to you. Are they nice? Are they friendly? Are they polite? Or do they just think it would be cool to talk to you like you're their old, I don't know, gangster friend? You know, I do this kind of street art stuff and have this little bit street art style. And then I got this creative director from a big advertising agency who just sends me a message that starts with, "Hey, dude." And I have no idea who this guy was. And this is how he introduced himself to me. "Hey, dude." Yeah. And I knew this couldn't be good. And I talked to him for a while and it was totally stupid in the end. But it was a very, very big worldwide agency. But for a good job, mostly people wouldn't address you like that.
Right.
You know?
What's up, homie?
Yeah. He also didn't use like capital letters. Everything was in small letters and no punctuation. And yeah.
Oh no.
I'm not a fan of things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be professional, like in all of your. You got to put yourself out there in a good way, no matter how big of a wig you are at a big company. Like you have to still be professional, whether you're just starting out, especially when you're just starting out, or whether you've been there for a while.
Absolutely.
So, like, what advice would you give to people maybe just starting out that any kind of opportunity that they kind of get would be like a success, like you said, when you're starting out? Do you just say yes to everything, or do you kind of have to just use your instincts to know if you're not going to get paid for something, or is it okay to not get paid for something when you're just starting out?
It always depends on which kind of project it is. I did a lot of stuff where I didn't get paid. I still do sometimes things where I don't get paid, but it's always depending on what is the reason. If it's really good friends of you and they are starting something where they don't have money and they ask you if you want to do it, that's something different. But if it's people who just know you a little bit, but you've never been friends, and suddenly they think, yeah, we're such good friends and we have this startup, and but later on you will earn a lot of money, but not right now. Then it doesn't make sense. It's always, you have to get a feeling for it. What really helps you in a way, and where people are just trying to take advantage of you, because a lot of people think with design and illustration that it's actually something that basically they could do on their own. It's not really work, they see the final logo and think, yeah, I could have done that. They don't see how much work you have to put into it to get to this point. So a lot of people somehow think it's okay you get a guest list spot and you get free drinks if you design the whole poster for a whole year for our club. This is not payment. They earn money, so you have to earn money. And it's okay, I think, to do free work, but you really have to know for whom you're doing it. Like, don't do it for people who actually earn money with your work. That's what I would say. I mean, I just did a label for this drink a friend is producing. And I know that it's just this very small thing he's doing for fun. And he only wanted to have one of my drawings. But I thought it would be nice to do a label. So I told him he doesn't have to pay it. I would just do it because I want to have these kind of bottles with my label on them. But if he would have asked for that beforehand, like, yeah, you can do this, but I don't have money, then I wouldn't have done it. But he didn't ask for me to do the whole label in the first place. He just wanted some nice thing that I already did to put it on there. And I thought, yeah, if I do it, then I will do it right. So that's for me something different, because he's also really a friend. But if people are trying to talk you into different reasons why they can't pay you for something that will pay them later on, then it just doesn't make sense.
Right. That's really good advice, man. I'm sorry. That's really good advice, dude. To kind of like really use your instincts and really think about like, what is this thing that you're creating for them? What is that going to do for them? And I also think it's a good idea to think about it in the flip side. If you want to collaborate with somebody else, an artist or musician or whatever it may be, whatever's in your mind that you're thinking that, oh, I want to work with this talented person and I want them to like maybe do something for me, to kind of think of it like with that mindset as well, like this bartering system almost, like what can I do to help them, perhaps in exchange they could do something for me or collaborate with me or become a part of this project that I have an idea for, and to really approach it in that kind of a friendly manner. I think it's really good advice.
Yeah.
You were talking a little bit about getting names in your portfolio. I mentioned a bunch of them in the intro, and that was only a few of them. Like, you have tons of clients that you work for, and I imagine that you have a lot of projects that you're working on right now.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm getting at is like, how then do you balance all of them and then on top of that, also kind of pursue your own personal work?
The difference you can see now is that I did a lot of personal work a few years back, but right now I'm not doing a lot of personal work because I just don't have the time. The thing is that for me, drawing is not really work. So if I have a day off, chances are pretty big that I would draw anyway, or that I would paint anyway. So the biggest problem for me right now is just to find some time to realize the ideas that I have. That was way easier a few years back. Right now, it's mostly I have 1 day or I have 2 days, but back then I had a few weeks to create something. I don't have that right now. But I'm pretty organized in how I work. Mostly I get up together with my girlfriend. So she has to go to work and I'm already up then. And then I work till she gets back. So I have almost office hours. But if, for example, she's gone for the weekend, chances are pretty big I will paint for the whole weekend. That's how my life works for the last 10 years or so.
Right, and that becomes so much easier when, like you said, like drawing isn't work, and it just it's fun and it's meditative, and you're able to do that. So that's basically that formula has worked for you since then.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's also a lot of things that take your time, just organizing things. I mean, I have to do my taxes and all that stuff. I have to answer to emails. I mean, stuff you wouldn't think about before. You work for this big client and they always have their contracts ready that you always have to sign because that's just how they do it. And then it's like 10 pages of very, very complicated English stuff that I have to read and to sign. It can take a lot of time just to get through all these things. So the drawing part really is something that I enjoy.
Yeah, it's the easy part.
Yeah.
Well, I know how busy that you've been, and we were talking before, like you were one of the very first people that I reached out to a little ways back. So we've been kind of going back and forth, and it's really an honor to get you on the show, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Yeah,
thanks for having me. I mean, I never removed you from my to-do list. This whole podcast thing, yeah.
Yeah, I know how that goes though. The old to-do list. I have a million things on mine, things that have been on there for 2 years now.
Yeah, but it's crazy how many people you already got there. I mean, there's also a lot of people that I know. Some of them I know in person, some of them I know their work, but it's really a nice list of people that you interviewed.
Yeah, well, for me, being able to talk, this whole part of it is like drawing is for you. It's not work. It's very enjoyable. So it's easy to like just to talk to all of them. But before we do let you go, though, I want to ask for what we call the final push. And this is where I ask you to reach to the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best final words of advice and really push them to pursue their own creative passions.
Yeah, my advice would be, in short, if you want to do something creative, be it illustration, photography, whatever, you have to be productive. You have to create things. And then especially you have to put them out there. You have to be online. You have to have a profile on Behance or whatever, because it may sound hard, but nobody needs you. There's so many artists. Nobody really is waiting for you. But if they see your work, maybe they will work with you anyway, because that's how everybody starts right now. Nobody would say we need more illustrators, but if you're out there and you're good, you will get jobs anyway. And I can see now after years where I see all my friends, what kind of jobs they're having. If you will ever be able to live from work like that, like what I do, I think you can consider yourself very, very happy and very lucky. So it's really worth it.
Absolutely. Like you said, that lifelong desire to be a painter without a boss. I like that notion.
Yeah, I actually really said that to my parents when I was like 5. I forgot about it. They reminded me, so I put it back on my website.
No, man, that's the goal, man. But I really like that advice. It is kind of depressing or a little bit demoralizing, but that, you're not needed. It's not like people are like looking for the next best illustrator, the next best designer, artist, musician, whatever it is. But if you can start to create work, create a portfolio, you can kind of create that need in them
right.
when they start to see your stuff. But it all comes down to actually producing stuff, like you said.
Yeah, and really, really showing your stuff. Because I have some friends who they were pretty good when we studied. There were some people who were way better than me, but still till today, I almost can't find anything online. And it just doesn't work if you don't show your work.
Do you think that lack of their work like out there comes from shyness or just not confidence or just laziness?
I think it's all of it together. Like you're shy and you don't want people to criticize your work. So that's a very good reason not to really start. And this is pretty convenient because it would be work. You know what I mean?
Right.
It would be a lot of work to do it. But this whole idea of being shy and being afraid of getting criticized, first of all, without criticism, you won't get better. And secondly, when you start, people will only tell you that they like it. That's the cool thing. Because as long as you're not famous and you create something that's nice, people will tell you it's nice. If it's not good, people just won't care. When you're famous, maybe, then it might be different. Because when you're famous, the haters will come from everywhere. But as long as you're not famous, I really think I remember almost every negative comment I ever got, because normally you don't get negative comments.
Right.
People just say, yeah, it's great, awesome, please check out my portfolio. This is how people react to your work when you start out. So in the first place, you only get positive reactions normally. And it's not just like with me. I've seen what other people did. So this is just the way how people behave. People in general are not evil.
Right. But when you've created this thing that it's taken you so long to not only create or develop the style or like to really find something that you made that you're really like kind of proud of, and then the idea of putting it out on the internet, you just assume that the universe is just going to scream, boo, like you suck, you know, and it's just not the reality, true. But in your head, yeah.
But also maybe you shouldn't wait for years to finish this one thing. Just the first projects I put online were just more or less random collections of portraits I made. And almost all of those portraits were made of photos and you could see it. And there was this one guy who just wrote beneath one of my projects, "Stop copying photographs." And it still stings till today that he wrote that.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of right.
Mm-hmm.
But I got like 100 comments where people said, "Oh, it's so awesome." And it's just what I mean, how it normally works. Is when you start out and you're very new and you're young, why should people really, really give you hard criticism? That's not how it works. Mostly people are pretty nice and pretty constructive, especially on Behance. So don't wait for this one project that takes you 2 years.
Right.
Because then, of course, then I also would think, oh my God, what will people think? I just put stuff out every few weeks. I put something out, and some of it people like more than other things, but then you get more confidence, you know. And it's also, in a way, it's always subjective, you know. We're talking about art and illustration and different styles. And how could you say my style is better or worse than somebody else's style? It's a matter of taste in a way.
Right. And that's the other thing too. And something that I like to try to remind people is the fact that if everybody kind of is like, oh, that's nice about your art or your whatever your creative thing is, it's probably not special. You know, it's probably not. So you kind of do need those haters because, you know, if people hate it, if there's a few people that don't like it and it's just not for them, well, there's going to be people that it really is for them. And it's like totally like up their alley. So like to really kind of almost embrace that dichotomy and embrace the fact that if there are people that are on one end of the spectrum, there's going to be people that are way on the other end. And you don't really want everybody right in the middle anyway. Yeah,
there's no artist out there that is universally loved, you know. There will always be somebody who doesn't like it. Some people only don't like it because the mainstream likes it, you know. They're just against it because everybody else is not against it. So the whole criticism thing, after a while, the more you're out there, the less you actually read what people comment. I didn't really do it to get feedback. I only did it to somehow find clients. And That's what I did in the end. It's what worked out. And whatever people wrote about my stuff, it didn't matter because it worked out. I got my jobs then. And I got them because I know for some of my jobs, I still know how people found me because they told me. And without going online, this would have never worked for me.
Yep. You have to just create and then put it out there.
Yeah.
Man, thank you again, Andreas, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Of course. And you can find Andreas on his website, which is andreaspreis.com. That's ANDREASPREIS.com. On Instagram, he is Andreas Preis, and on Facebook, he is Andreas Preis Illustration. And we'll have all that linked up at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Andreas Preis. Andreas, thanks again.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome.
Had so much fun talking with Andreas. Something that we got into this episode that I want you to think about. If you don't use digital tools for whatever reason, maybe think about at least looking into it or at least experimenting with them, because they really can make your life easier and they can allow you to experiment. It's not just being able to take that digital tool around with you, like take your tablet around and be able to whip it out whenever you do find that very limited free time that you have to kind of dive back into a project that you started, but also just being able to mess around. When you know that you're able to hit delete or hit undo, it can really make that whole process less intimidating when you are trying to experiment with new things, knowing that all it takes is a simple click of a button to forget about that mistake completely. So it does give you that freedom to really try new things out and explore. And I know Mike Azevedo, who has been on the show before, might disagree with that, because sometimes you get too reliant on the fact that you can hit the delete key, you can hit the undo a bunch of times, and then it can stop you from making those decisions, those big decisions that you need to make in a piece of art. But on the same token, it can also give you that freedom to try new things out, to pivot in a different direction that you normally wouldn't have done if it was on paper, because you're scared of screwing up the entire piece as a whole. So definitely something to consider. Like Andreas said, there are plenty of free resources out there to learn how to use these tools, and most of these tools don't need that much explanation in the first place. So just check it out. And the other point I wanted to make from this episode was the fact that nobody needs you as an artist. I think that's a really sound point that Andreas made that I think sometimes we all forget. There are plenty of other artists, plenty of other creative people out there doing the work, and you're actually not needed. However, there is a lot of potential work that can be done for people, but you have to put your work out there. People are not going to come looking for you, knocking on your door, asking if you've, created the next best thing, asking, what is your style all about? You are the person that has to put yourself out there, put your style out there, show yourself to the world, put yourself in front of potential eyes that will pay you for your work or pay you for potential work because of the work that you've already done. Like Andreas said with his murals, you can't just tell people, yes, I think I can create a mural. You have to create a mural first and then show people that work before they will hire you to do a mural or allow you to do a mural for them. The best way to get exactly the type of work that you want to get is by creating that work in the first place. Adding it to your portfolio and then showing people what you're capable of. They're not going to look for you. They don't need you. But if you show them what you've got, maybe they'll realize that they do need you. On Thursday's show, we have Mike Coos. Mike does a lot of things. He does web UI design, he does graphic design, branding, illustration, and lastly, he does photography. And he had a lot to say about each of these things. His main gig is doing the web UI design and graphic design for brands, for companies. But he also has a photography Instagram page where that's kind of his side thing. It's just something he does for fun. However, he has like 800,000 followers on Instagram. So he had a lot of interesting things to say about both things. And I think it's an episode that you don't want to miss no matter what your kind of creative passion is. And you can find him at mikecoos.com. And on Instagram and Twitter, he is Mike Coos, or you can find those links at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/221. That is all I've got for you today. Hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So go and get it done. And we will see you on Thursday if you need the push again. I love you all. Go get some amazing work done, and we will see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.